Android is a Linux-based mobile operating system developed by Google, so it serves as its mobile operating system. Today, the platform is the foundation for a wide variety of modern technology, such as mobile phones and tablets, wearable tech, TVs, and other smart devices. Typical Android builds ship with a range of pre-installed apps and support the installation of third-party apps through the Google Play Store and other marketplaces. It's free, it's open source, and its source code is known as Android Open Source Project, which is primarily licensed under the Apache license. The Android OS is divided into various version numbers, implying significant jumps in features, operation, and stability, which usually have code names. The history of Android begins in October 2003, well before the term smartphone was widely used and, well, several years before Apple announced its first iPhone and iOS. In 2005, the next big chapter in Android's history began when the original company was acquired by Google. And of course, in 2007, Apple launched the first iPhone and ushered in a new era in mobile computing. At that time, Google was still running on Android in, secret. So that year, the company slowly began to reveal plans to compete with Apple and other mobile platforms. And the public beta of Android version 1.0 launched for developers on November 5th, 2007. By September 2008, the very first Android smartphone was announced, the T-Mobile G1, also known as the HTC Dream in other parts of the world. The first official generic codename for Android didn't appear until the 1.5 Cupcake release was released in April of 2009. Now, naming Android versions after sweet candies and sweets traditionally belonged to Ryan Gibson, the project manager at Google. I don't know if you're like me, but I can certainly whet my appetite during Android versions. But I'm going to continue to list them and maybe grab some snacks along the way. But I'm sorry if you're somewhere where you won't be able to, imbibe. But anyway, Google quickly launched Android 1.6 Donut in September 2009. So the new OS now offered support for carriers using CDMA-based networks, and this allowed Android phones to be sold by all carriers around the world. In October 2009, Google released version 2.0 of the OS with the official codename Eclair, and one of my favorites, I must say. So this version was the first to add text-to-speech support and also introduce live wallpapers, multiple account support, and Google Maps navigation, among many other new features and improvements. Android 2.2 Froyo was officially launched in May of 2010. Now, Dalvik JIT compiler that compiles bytecode into native machine code at runtime was added to Froyo. So it also has several new features, including Wi-Fi mobile hotspot functions and push notifications via the C2DM service, or Android Cloud to Device Messaging Service. Of course, Flash support and some other things. Now, Android 2.3 Gingerbread was launched in September 2010. The OS received a user interface refresh under Gingerbread. It added support for using near-field communication, or NFC functions, for smartphones with the required hardware. By February 2011, Honeycomb was introduced. It was created for tablets and other mobile devices with larger displays. And then another of my favorites, Ice Cream Sandwich, was released in October 2011. It included a favorites on the home screen, along with the first support for unlocking a phone by using its camera to take a picture of its owner's face. That kind of biometric sign-in support has evolved and certainly improved considerably since. The Jelly Bean era of Android began in June of 2012 with the release of Android 4.1. There are new notification features that display more content or action buttons, along with full support for the Android version of Google's Chrome web browser. Android 4.4 is the first version of the OS that actually used a previously trademarked name for a piece of candy. KitKat officially launched in September 2013, and it was optimized to run on smartphones that had as little as 512 megabytes of RAM. So this allowed phone makers to use the latest version of Android on much cheaper handsets. Then Android 5.0, or Lollipop, launched in the fall of 2014. The Android runtime became the default runtime for devices running Android 5.0 and higher. So Android 5.0 Lollipop was also a major shakeup in the overall look of the operating system. It was the first version of the OS that used Google's new material design language. In the fall of 2015, Android 6.0 Marshmallow was released. It included features such as native support for fingerprint biometric unlocking, USB Type-C support, the introduction of Google Pay, and so much more. Version 7.0 of Google's mobile operating system launched in the fall of 2016. Android Nougat supported the Vulkan API for faster 3D rendering. In March 2017, Google announced and released the first developer preview for Android Oreo. So it packed in lots of visual changes into the settings menu, along with native support for picture-in-picture mode, notification channels, new autofill APIs for better management of passwords and fill data, and again, a whole lot more. On August 6, 2018, the company officially launched the final version of Android 9.0, giving it the official code name of Pie. Android 9.0 Pie included some new features designed to help extend your smartphone's battery life. Now, that was achieved with the use of on-device machine learning, which predicts which apps you're going to use now and which you won't use until later. On August 22nd, 2019, Google announced a major refresh of the Android brand, and that included a new logo and, more importantly, the decision to ditch the traditional dessert name for the next version. So, as a result, I go without dessert, and Android Q is officially known just as Android 10. Android 10 had a number of new features and improvements, as well as a number of new APIs, and that included support for the rush of then upcoming foldable phones. Then, of course, finally, the final version of Android 11 was launched on September 8th of 2020. Now, Android 11 has arrived with plenty of new features, and that includes a new conversations notification category where all of your chats from various apps are collected in one place. You also have the option to save every notification that has appeared on your phone in the last 24 hours. A brand new feature lets you record your phone's screen, complete with audio, without needing a third-party app. There's also a new section of Android 11 dedicated to controlling smart home devices. It's come a long way, baby.